Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, so we are jumping straight into some really insightful material today. It's all focused on the energies for October 17th, 2025. And honestly, the tension that just leaps off the page from all these sources, it's fundamental, isn't it? How do we actually tell the difference between real, genuine confidence and just, bravado that ends up tripping us up? So our mission today is to really get into the astrological dynamics for this specific day. We're looking at these forces that, well, they push us towards big ambitions, but at the same time, they demand some pretty radical boundary setting and maybe a moment of internal healing, too. We'll connect all that technical stuff directly to a narrative, what we call a story scope, just to kind of ground these ideas in something more, well, real time.
Right. And what the sources keep highlighting is that this Friday, October 17th, it's absolutely pivotal for recalibration. That's the word they use. And it's not just a suggestion. It feels more like a necessity. The material is pretty clear. The biggest hurdles you're likely to face, they probably won't be external demands. It's more about that internal tendency to overextend ourselves, that feeling of needing to do everything. And maybe more critically, it's about the fear of facing uncomfortable truths, those personal, sometimes deep-seated wounds. If you can't really sit with that internal discomfort, navigating the external pressures becomes, well, almost impossible.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that internal conflict because the sources mention the flow of the day is pretty specific. It says October 17th starts relatively slowly, gives you this quiet space for contemplation, almost like a little window before things really pick up speed and the pressure starts building later in the morning.
Yeah, and that initial quiet, it's actually a gift, I think, because the warning against bravado comes up immediately, and it's serious. The sources describe the line between real confidence and just cockiness as being, well, really tricky to spot on this particular day. Confidence, that comes from competence, from self-awareness. Bravado, that's usually rooted in fear, isn't it? Like a defense mechanism to try and stop people from dismissing you.
Oh, that makes perfect sense, right? If it's a defense, then the tension really shows up as a choice, doesn't it? When you hit that point in the road, do you take the easy road, the way we wish things could be done, or do you pick the challenging but probably correct way, as the sources put it, which usually means more work, more integrity, maybe slowing down a bit?
hmm And this individual tension, it mirrors something larger happening collectively that day. We're told there's this heightened awareness of deep wounds carried by those whose rights have been denied. Now, that's not just, a political aside. It's presented as an energetic principle. The insight seems to be that when we choose the harder, more honest path internally, when we face our own stuff or insecurities or fears, that healing process actually makes us stronger, better equipped to stand up for what's right out there in the world. Our personal recalibration sort of fuels collective action.
Wow, that's a powerful connection. Personal healing, feeding external integrity.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is where we get into the actual celestial mechanics driving all this, right?
Mm.
The potential for both ambition and boundary bleed. We're looking at Sun square Jupiter and Sun opposite Chiron. That feels like, well, a massive internal pressure cooker.
It absolutely is. And understanding how these forces work together is, I think, key to navigating the day successfully. Let's start with Sun square Jupiter. Now, a square aspect always creates friction. It forces a choice. Jupiter is the great expander, right? So it brings this huge wave of optimism, of feeling like anything is possible. Sounds great. But in a square, that energy can kind of inflate the ego. It leads us to overestimate our abilities or overpromise. That's the quote from the source.
So it's like saying, oh yeah, I can definitely deliver that huge project by tomorrow morning, no problem, when realistically you'd need a week. Maybe you learn 3 new skills on top of it.
Exactly like that, yes. It's that moment where we stretch beyond our actual competence, maybe out of enthusiasm, maybe out of pride, or maybe a bit of both. And the specific caution here is really important. If we push too hard, then our efforts may blow up in our face. So you have to know the difference between ambitious faith and just self-destructive enthusiasm. The Sun-Jupiter square wants ambition, sure, but only if it's built on something solid.
Right, structure. And maybe that structure comes from the other aspect, the counterweight. Sun opposite Chiron. Chiron, the wounded healer, is opposite the sun, our core identity, our vitality. So for you, the listener, this really frames the day's healing requirement, doesn't it? This opposition forces us to look at some uncomfortable truths about those deep foundational wounds.
Yes, specifically wounds related to independence, self-identity, maybe feeling like you don't quite belong. The material points directly at those areas. Sun opposite Chiron finds a light on the places where we feel maybe fundamentally flawed or excluded somehow. And genuine growth, the sources suggest, can only happen if you stop trying to mask those wounds, stop covering them up with external achievements, or, crucially here, with bravado. You can't really set a firm boundary if deep down you're terrified that saying no will lead to rejection or dismissal.
Oh, okay. So that's the so what. You combine that inflated Jupiter ambition with the deep Chiron fear of dismissal, and you get the perfect storm for boundary bleed. The material gives us this really clear definition for navigating it. It says, balance is not cramming every demand into our day, it's choosing which requests actually matter. It's about conscious elimination, really.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Conscious choice. And if you fail to eliminate, if you try to do it all, you overextend. The consequence is pretty immediate. When we stretch too far, our boundaries bleed. That means your emotional energy, your physical stamina, the quality of your work, it all suffers. You actually become less effective the more you try to cram in.
Okay, to make this less abstract, let's bring in our StoryScope example, Elise. She seems like the perfect illustration of this whole dynamic. Her day starts with all the classic signs of being overextended, right? Unfinished plans looming, that restless night, the cold coffee. Her schedule's already packed with things she probably shouldn't have agreed to, tentative promises. And by mid-morning, just as the day's momentum is really starting to build, she's already in a conflict. She's designing this new community center, and the sources are specific. It's meant to heal a wound, not just fill a space. So she's fighting for the project's deeper purpose, but her own internal state is, well, kind of fraying.
Right, and this is where that Chiron wound, dressed up as bravado, just flares up. She clashes directly with Tom, the city planner. He's focused on logistics, convenience, the easy way, and he accuses her of overcomplicating the layout, which of course hits that core nerve for her, that fear of being dismissed, maybe seen as too difficult or too sensitive. And her immediate reaction, it's sharp. It's that classic pride masking insecurity. She snaps back, what works for you? Maybe it's designed to put him down, not move things forward. That's the moment her personal wound, that fear of dismissal, morphs into cockiness.
But the narrative gives us that critical moment of self-awareness as she caught herself. She realized that sharpness wasn't strength, it was defensiveness. So she takes that crucial breath, right? And that pause lets her pivot. She stops trying to just win the argument and starts arguing for the project's purpose. You can almost feel the shift. She says something like, look, if we just build this for convenience, we're just repeating the same mistakes that caused the need for healing in the first place. Let's do it right, even if it's harder. She basically swaps the ego-driven need to be right for the purpose-driven need to build something meaningful, something that lasts.
And that pivot, it completely changes the energy in the room. The sources say the work shifts immediately from being a battle to being, well, a real conversation, productive. What helps her make that shift internally is this piece of wisdom that echoes in her mind. It's attributed to her grandmother. Healing begins when we stop pretending we were never hurt, unquote. That connects straight back to that Sun opposite Chiron energy. She has to acknowledge her own fear, her own wound around being dismissed, before she can effectively champion the project's deeper value.
That's a fantastic illustration. Okay, so this successful recalibration, this pivot, brings us to the evening. The sources describe the end of the day as actually a really powerful time to get things done correctly. It's Friday evening, and the energy apparently supports structured, detailed action. It's a chance to reorganize and refocus after all that tension earlier on.
Yeah, the energy definitely shifts. It's driven by a really nice combination of supporting aspects later in the day. The Virgo moon forms a sextile with Mercury, and Mars is involved too, providing drive. This isn't the energy for grand, sweeping new ideas. It's much more focused. The Virgo moon and Mercury together give you sharper communication and analytical abilities, really precise thinking, and then Mars adds the drive to act on insights. So it's about taking those insights and actually doing something concrete with them.
Ah, okay, so that's perfect for execution then. The evening becomes ideal for detailed work, planning or tackling tasks that require both precision and energy. You're not necessarily starting big new things, but you're nailing down the foundations of those harder, more integrity-driven decisions you made earlier.
Exactly. Think about Virgo's meticulous, detail-oriented focus combined with Mars's energy to just get stuff done. It translates into really effective, structured implementation. If you use the afternoon to, say, set those necessary boundaries like Elise did, the evening is when you execute the plan within those boundaries. You refine the details. And we see Elise doing just that. She stays late, but not to prove a point this time. She's focusing on the structure, the nitty-gritty details that actually matter for the community center. She's listing specific lighting needs, defining accessibility requirements, outlining sustainable materials, scheduling community feedback sessions. She's turning that big vision into granular, actionable reality.
And the sources really highlight the emotional shift this brings. They note her state moves away from that kind of frantic defensive energy from the morning, towards a calm energy and eventually peace. It suggests she found peace not necessarily in stopping work, but in that rigorous, focused, meaningful work.
Right, and that focused precision really clarifies the difference between genuine productivity and just being busy, doesn't it? The observation about her evening work is so clear. She wasn't trying to prove herself, she was building something that would last. She chose purpose over pride, and she leveraged that focused evening energy to make it happen.
So we started this deep dive really wrestling with that tension between overextension and boundaries, didn't we? Driven by that volatile mix of Sun-squared Jupiter's ambition and Sun-opposite Chiron's healing call. And it seems the path forward involves, well, radical honesty about our own vulnerabilities,
hmm
which in turn lets us choose the harder path of integrity instead of the easier path of bravado.
hmm And the evening energy confirms the goal isn't just to get through the tension, it's actually to use the clarity that comes from navigating it, to build something solid, something enduring. The whole day feels like a potent reminder that the quality of our work, and maybe even our sense of peace, is often determined more by what we consciously choose not to do, what we say no to, rather than how much we manage to cram in.
Right. So what does this mean for you listening to this? If the core lesson here is about choosing that challenging but probably correct path, and maybe recognizing that sometimes convenience is just a way to avoid dealing with a deeper issue, a structural flaw, or even a personal wound, we want to leave you with this thought to chew on. Consider what areas in your own life, personal or professional, might still need you to do something the harder way. Where might you be opting for speed or convenience, when what's really needed is the tougher work of confronting a wound or building a structure that will genuinely last beyond just your own momentary pride or comfort? That's your deep dive reflection for the weekend. Thanks for diving deep into the sources with us today. We'll talk to you next time.